3, 2, 1.
Here we go!
Hello, how's it going? Thank you for clicking on this video. My name is Kieran.
And you?
There you go. This is Talk About Investing. This video, we're talking about 8 steps to purchasing your first property, your investment property. Before we even get into that, it's kind of just to introduce myself. Once again, my name is Kieran Tross. I work a full-time job, work in IT, have a 9 to 5. A lot of times when you see these videos, you see people talking and they're just acting like, hey, they've got everything down packed. They're, what's the better word I should be using? Experts. We're not acting like we're experts. We're doing, going to 9 to 5 as well, but also working and doing investments. Hugh, I'll let you go ahead.
Pretty much the same thing. Like I work in IT. I've been in IT for just over 10 years now, currently residing in London. The whole purpose of this show is to educate people and our trials and tribulations as we go through investing, as we buy investment property, explaining how to protect yourself, making sure to protect your assets, and just want to make sure that when you go forward and when you're making these purchases, you're making them smarter. At the end of the day, the knowledge that we give you, it's only for informational purposes. Like you still want to go out, you still want to do your research. Don't just kind of take our word for it, because what may work for us will not work for you.
Yeah, that was perfectly said. That actually leads me to the next point. We are not certified financial planners, advisors, nor certified financial analysts, nor economists, nor a CPA, nor an accountant, nor a lawyer. All right. So got to put this out here. Don't want to get sued, right? We are not financial professionals in a formal or for any formal education. We both believe and take pride in the sense of freedom, satisfaction, fulfillment, and empowerment that we get from financially competent and being conscious, managing our family's money. Whatever you learn from this channel, you're free to use it as whatever you want to, but it's pretty much just educational purposes. Just kind of reiterate what Hugh was talking about. All right. So let's get to the first one, right?
So right now, the hope of this first episode is we're just going to kind of go through what you should do first, and the main thing that you want to do when you think about purchasing a property for investment is protecting your current investment, protecting your current assets. And this starts with just forming an LLC. Mm-hmm. What we want to do is just explaining to you is different types of LLCs, why you should form an LLC, and just kind of shed some light on that, because there was a lot of research that Kieran did, myself, like just to make sure that we understood what and why we needed to do this, because you can purchase a property without forming an LLC. However, what happens is this opens you up to just someone trying to sue you. It does not protect your current assets. It does not protect things that you own. It does not protect your family. So people can literally go after you for everything you own. So I'll let Kieran kind of take over this part, as he has a little bit more knowledge than I do.
Nah, you started off good, man. You started off really good. So the 2 main reasons that you want to create an LLC is because of asset protection, what you were mentioning earlier, and then also taxation. With taxes, you can use pass-through income, and then the way you want to structure your LLC is another part of it as well. So I have a friend, really proud of him, very smart guy. He's a doctor. He purchased his LLC. He has his home, but then he also has another home that he's investing with. But he has both homes in his name. Now, the problem with that is the home that he lives in is him, his wife, his son, his 2 kids. Then he has another property that he's investing in. So if his tenant has any issues or tries to sue him for whatever case, it doesn't really matter, whatever case it is, and the cost is more than what the house is, they could go after his personal house, and that's where his kids sleep at night. That's one of the reasons why you want to do asset protection, right? Because the LLC, protects people from going after your personal assets, your bank account information, all that other stuff. So this way you're protected. And then taxation purposes, when you have the LLC, you just have pass-through taxes. It just makes things a little bit easier for you, especially when you have multiple homes, and then you have LLCs for each house that you own, and then you'll have a hierarchy LLC, which is the parent LLC, which would be doing you have your operational agreement with that LLC, you have your bank account with that LLC, and things of that nature. So LLC is very important for you to have when you're doing an investment property.
Now, just to kind of touch base on what Kieran said, did I cut you off? Or
no, you good. You good.
What a lot of people don't realize is a property that resides around your investment or your property that you own. Like, let's say if you own a building, that sidewalk could also fall underneath your property. So if you have cracks, if someone falls and trips on that, they can not only sue you for just the building of itself, but they can also go after your home. Now, in Kieran's example, someone that's a doctor, if he has X amount in his bank account, they can also go after whatever is inside of his bank account. If he has college tuitions in his kid's name that he opened, they can go after that, because what is happening is all of this is pretty much kind of clear funds. So this is pretty much what you're worth. So when you have an investment property that's in your name, everything comes underneath what is your full net worth. So they can pretty much go after everything, and they can pretty much take your own personal home, not just sue you for what happens on that property.
Man, you talk about that sidewalk thing, man. I still got snow on my sidewalk. I need to go out there and finish shoveling. So that's LLCs. We're going to do a whole video just on LLCs. It can get very, very granular with LLCs. There's a lot more to talk about, but for the sake of this video, we're talking about the steps to purchase your first investment property. The next step, opening up a business checking account.
So the main reason why you want to open up a business checking account is to separate your money. When you have all of your money together, especially when it comes to forming your LLC, is as long as you have that checking account like in your name and everything, what will happen is it will show up on your tax form. So now when it shows up on your tax form, if you want to go buy a car or anything, it also increases your debt to income ratio. So now by you actually opening up a business account and separating that, you're separating what your debt to income ratio is. It's also separating what you own and what you have to pay off.
Absolutely right. One of the things I see people make mistakes is that when they have a business, they're using their own personal account for that business as well. And things get a little messy, right? Especially when it comes time to do your taxes. Then it's just like, well, did I pay for this? What did I pay for this? The personal account, and I pay for this as well. And then all types of different stuff. You need to separate your money. You have your money out of your business checking account. Use that for all business purposes, right? Because you also want to get tax breaks. So if you're you're driving around for mileage, you get tax breaks for that. If you're going to get food, tax breaks for that. If you have to pay for a travel, hotel, tax breaks for that. You can't work those same tax breaks if you're using your personal account. Once again, it goes back to that whole, use the benefits of having the LLC. The government wants you to create businesses, and for reasons why is because it makes the country more profitable, the more businesses there are. So you get tax breaks for these kind of things. Having a business checking account is very essential for having a business. And there's tons of different accounts that you can create. Brick and mortar banks that you can go to, or you could go online banks. To be honest with you, I feel like online banks provide better incentives than brick and mortar because they have less overhead. But that's a whole other video to kind of go into in terms of for business checking accounts. And the next one was PreApproval Letter. Actually, we really should go to doing your research. That's a step in itself. We kind of skipped that one, but that really should be the first step. Just do your research. You have to do your research when it comes to buying a home. Figure out stuff in terms of cost. You want to figure out the location that you want to go ahead and purchase your home in. You also want to figure out how much money you'll need in terms of, the down payment, not only the down payment, getting the house, but then you also got to think about if something does happen, how you're going to go about fixing those things as well. Doing your research is very, very important. Certain areas will provide you different profit, right? So if you are going into buying a home, you may say, I'm going to go buy a home and do an Airbnb strategy. Or you might say, I'm actually going to go in a home and then lease it out. Depending on the area will provide you a better understanding of which strategy you should go after.
And to be honest, do your research should have been the very first thing that we started with, because where you plan on purchasing your property determines where you want to where you will formulate where you will want to form your LLC. So yeah,
no, you're right.
To form an LLC in New York for a property in Pennsylvania and vice versa. Or, if your property is in Ohio, if your property is in Chicago or wherever it is, you want to make sure that your LLC that you're forming is also where you're purchasing the property. You don't have to limit yourself to only purchasing property that is local to you. You may know that area, but you may also find something cheaper outside of your area. So that's where we should have just started, was just doing your research. Know where you plan on purchasing that property. And then when you understand where you want to purchase that property, why you're purchasing that property, what type of profit that property would yield you, you want to go and start to formulate your LLC.
No, you're right. I was listening to this Anderson Business Advisors. If you all get a chance, type that in YouTube. They have some really good stuff. And one of the things that they were mentioning is, if you have a tenant and you're trying to sue them because they haven't, paid rent or whatever the case may be, and you have an LLC in New York, but you're doing business in Chicago, you're going to have a very hard time suing that tenant and getting rid of them because, you're not doing business. You didn't apply for an LLC in that state, and then you didn't file for one, which also you pay for one. So this is say that you can do business in that state. So each property has to have the LLC in the state the property is located at. That's very important. So doing your research is very important because one misstep can cause you to lose out on a lot of money. The next step, get a pre-approval letter. You definitely want to do this because you may say, hey, I can afford a $250,000 house. And then you get a pre-approval letter that humbles you and says, no, you can only afford a $150,000 house. So it's very important for you to get a pre-approval letter. There's different types of loans that you can go after. Whether it's a conventional loan, FHA loan, or a VA loan. It's tons of them out there. Just when you're doing your research, you just figure out exactly about which one is best for you, and then go ahead and then get a pre-approval letter. Because a lot of times, if you want to talk to a real estate agent, one of the things that they'll say is, experienced real estate agent's going to say, hey, you need to give me a pre-approval letter. So now I know that one, you're serious, and two, that the bank says, yeah, we'll definitely lend him or her money.
This also comes in with why you want to have a bank account set up, because without that, it's going to make it much harder for you to get that pre-approval letter. And this also goes into our next topic of formulating your team. You want to make sure that the people that you are working with fits what your overall goal is. From your real estate agent to person that's going to be doing your taxes, to your lawyer, to the property manager. If you don't want to manage the property yourself, depending if you're buying like a 2-unit or like a 6-unit. A handyman, if you're not a handy person and you try and buy a fixer-upper, but you don't have a handyman, you're going to realize that these costs start to add up. So this also comes in with doing your research, making sure that you know what you're buying, making sure that you know how much work goes into this and what the cost is going to be of upkeeping this property.
Yeah, finding a team is important. Some people that consist of your team is real estate agent, handyman, like you said, home inspector, got your lender, lawyer, because a lawyer is going to give you information about, a lease. So let's just say if you purchase in the property. So in my case, I had purchased storage units, right? I had my lawyer look over the lease agreement that was there. So just so that we understand, if we knew that when we came in, we're like, hey, we're going to increase the rent. So the lawyer had to look at the lease and say, okay, is this valid for this lease? Now, thankfully for us, the lease was month to month. So once the month ended, that when we took over, we were able to say, okay, now let's increase the rent for the following month, which was liable, right? So you definitely want a lawyer, because a lawyer is going to help you before you purchase the property, during closing the deal of the property, and then lastly, after the property is closed out. So that this way you can continue doing business. And you never know, you might run into certain situations. And then a property manager is going to help you out depending on how far you are from your property. If you're more than 2 or 3 hours or something, if you're 2 hours away, you could probably just, head down to the property and do what you need to do. But if you're like 3 hours, 4 hours, you might be thinking about doing a property manager.
Okay, well said. And then, pretty much you start looking for a house, like once you've done your research, once you understand what type of property you're looking for, the area that you're looking for, it comes down to house hunting. A few tips that I would suggest when it comes to house hunting is a lot of people don't take into consideration what the bills are going to be. You get into something, you think, okay, I'm going to turn this into like, let's say, an Airbnb, but you don't think about what the monthly cost of, if you visit an apartment in the summer, or if you visit like a flat or a unit in the summertime, the cost of what it is to run that apartment is going to be completely different for having to heat that unit in the wintertime. So that's something that you want to take into consideration. What are some things that you look for, like when you're actually house hunting, Kieran?
It depends, right? So if you're house hunting and it's for you, if you're a single person versus if you're a family person, it's different, right? So you're going to look at one, crime rate in the area. You're going to look at schools because your kid's going to have to go there. You can look at taxes. That's another thing that you're going to look at in terms of house hunting. You're also going to look at how far it is from specific shopping areas, from your job. How long is your commute going to be, or is your commute going to shorten? And then also, like I said before, malls, shopping areas, things of that nature. You're going to look at all that as well. So all that stuff you take into account when you're looking for a house. Obviously, this is investments we're talking about. So even for investment properties, you also want to look at is it near any attractions? Is it near Jersey Shore? I live in Jersey. Or is it, near, it really doesn't really matter, right? It's more about, how you're going to make money because let's say, for instance, Airbnb. So if you know that you have Airbnb and you're near a area that has like concerts, right? Like Madison Square Garden or anything like that. Hopefully we can get to that point, having an Airbnb near Madison Square Garden. But if you have something like that, then hey, when you do purchase it, you're going to look at different events that are going to be happening so that this way you're like, okay, Beyonce's coming to town or whoever major artist is coming to town, and you bring up your costs. So those are the kind of things that you need to forecast when you're looking and doing house hunting.
And pretty much the next step that comes after this is just making the offer. Making the offer comes with, doing your due diligence. You want to, before you make an offer, you want to know the area. Will this place inflate? Is there a deflation? Like, you want to understand how the housing market has been in that area. Has it been up and down? A lot of times a place may be offered above market value. So you want to know what you're coming in, and you want to know if realistic. A lot of people don't know that when you make an offer on the property, you can also have the seller cover a majority of the cost. So this is something that you can write into your offer letter, of asking the seller to cover a majority of the fees if you want. So you don't have to just kind of make an offer and think, oh, I'm just going to go underneath or thing. Like, you want to make sure that you understand why this person is trying to sell this property and how you can capitalize on that.
Yeah, that's a really good point when you talk about the offer letter, because I'm just kind of add on to what you're saying. If you say you're going to go ahead, sorry, my phone's going off. If you say, hey, I want to get the house for, 280, and they're like, no, we're only going to give, the lowest we'll go down is the 290. You're like, okay, I'll buy it for 290, but you need to cover the closing costs. You could always negotiate. Now, they don't have to cover the closing costs. That's something that normally, the buyer is doing, but you can add that to it, and you never know, you might get away with it. My mantra is, it doesn't hurt to try. So just give it a try, see what happens there. But once you have the offer letter, the last step is closing the deal. Now, this is a step that you want to get to. There's definitely more after closing the deal in terms of, moving in, staging your investment property, all that other stuff that you need to go into, figuring out what makes sense in, the house and stuff like that, the rooms, how you want each room set up. But once you get to closing the deal, that's really where, one set of hard work is done. And then you get the next one where you now need to finish and work on your project and getting your house set up.
That's pretty much covers most of the process. Like we just this video is just more of to kind of briefly go into just like kind of like outlining the process without going into too much detail. Future episodes, we will actually go into more of a like structuring your LLC, just setting up the LLC and how you want to structure your offer letter and making sure like, you're getting the best offer that's possible. Tips and tricks of like searching, like sites to use to search for a home, what to look for in a home, even when you're doing the walkthrough, things that you want to look for in specific areas that may become problematic.
So tell the people, what book you reading right now, man?
Shucks, I can't even remember the name of the book. I went to like.
I know. I got my book. Hold on, give me 2 seconds. You got the same one, but I think you got the newer model. So I got mine. It's Investing in Real Estate, 4th edition. It's by Andrew McLean and Gary W. Eldred, PhD. So this is the book right here. So every month, Hugh and I decided that we're going to read a book, increase our knowledge, increase our education, and, our know-how. And you get a lot of information. You get more information about how to strategies and stuff like that. So one of the things about the offer, we mentioned earlier about the offer in a house, we picked up that information from a book. Like I never really thought about that when I purchased my house. I didn't think about, hey, let's see if I could get the owner to cover those costs, the closing costs. I never even thought about that. So that's actually, it's really good to continue reading these books and get understanding. I didn't pay for this book. It was actually in my house.
That's crazy.
It's good. Yeah, exactly. It's good. I'm almost done with this one. I think like 30 more pages to read with this one, but it's a really good book. So, even though this one is talking about, like they talked about Washington Mutual in this, so it's old, but a lot of the strategies are stuff that you can still use today.
Like hidden gems, because it's like, even though the times change, a lot of the information that is given is still pretty relevant. You just have to apply it to today's day and age. And, you don't want to just read one book without doing research, because that book may be structured for a specific area, even though like a book that may be printed last month by a new bill or a new law could be passed. So this also comes with, having a good team, having a good lawyer, having a good agent.
No, I agree. So that's pretty much it, y'all. I want to thank y'all for clicking on the video and watching and giving us your time. We're going to go through these steps really quickly, just from a high level before we close out. First one is do your research. I know we didn't start off with that, but that really should be the first one. Second one is create your LLC. Third is open a business checking account. Fourth step is get a pre-approval letter. 5 is find a team. 6 is house hunting. 7 is put the offer on the house. And then finally, 8 is closing the deal. You got anything else left you want to talk about?
I think that pretty much covers a majority of everything. We just kind of wanted this video to kind of just be quick, just kind of like just give an introduction. And, later on, as we go into more topics, as we actually go through our journey of purchasing our first property as a combined venture, we want to talk about the trials and tribulations that we go through with that. Even like, we started this, like we've already had one property swoop from underneath us because we weren't prepared. We didn't have our LLC in place. We didn't have we didn't have our account set up. This is a one thing, I can't express this enough, is making sure that you are prepared, structuring yourself and making sure once you start, because if you start house hunting and you don't know what you can afford and what you're approved for, and you don't have your things set up, by the time you start getting that set up, that deal is going to be gone from you. So, if you really want to get into this, even like a lot of the books, a lot of videos they took about having multiple LLCs set up, so these are pretty much shelved LLCs that when you're ready to make that purchase, when you're ready to buy the property, it's already set up. Because even when we were setting up, one thing that we ran into was Kieran forgot how to spell his own name.
No, it was I had autofill in Google Chrome, and it took off something, and that's the reason why. And I was looking at everything else. So,
so that delayed us in the process.
Actually, that wasn't creating the LLC. That was doing the EIN number. That was applying for the EIN number. But either way, whatever, that's fine. Yeah. But you're making a lot of sense there what you're talking about. So just being prepared. And once again, we're not coming across like we're experts or anything like that, but we're just being realistic, right? We're going to tell you exactly what mistakes we made, and we're going to tell you things that we did right.
So, sounds good, man.
So
final closing words or nah?
Yeah. So the motivational thought of the week is first deal. Obtain your first deal. Don't think about the 50-unit portfolio. We all know we want to get to that point, but just think about obtaining your first deal and you'll be fine.
All right. Sounds good, man. I'm Kieran.
Kieran, talk about investing. Later.